Hello, this is Pastor Matthew Woods from Grace Lutheran Church in New Albany, Indiana, and this is the daily devotion for June 28, 2021. Today's title, God's Timing. We're going to start off with a reading from John chapter 11. Verses 17 through 27, it says, On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. And many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Mary answered, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever believes in me will live even though they die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Now, I've heard it said that timing is everything. Well, let's think about it. There's some truth to that, right? What if someone had bought into Amazon in 1997 when it started? Look where we'd be today. Or if you bought into Apple in 1980, imagine that one. Or what if you decided to sell a house recently this last year? Look at the prices. Or what if you decided to build or buy a house this last year? Look at the prices. Timing seems to make a huge difference, doesn't it? No one likes delays, though. As I mentioned yesterday in my sermon, just going across town sometimes seems to be delayed and take forever, right? Somehow there are days when I seem to catch every light going from one side of town to the other. Then I get behind a slow driver who drives 10 miles below the speed limit and seems to have all day. Then I get stuck sometimes, or I used to anyway, waiting for a train here in New Albany. And I remember one time I got stuck behind the same train twice because I had driven from one side of town to the other and caught it again. Or how about construction, right? Construction the other day, I managed to get into a construction zone, and the guy with the sign flipped it to stop just as I was getting to the front there, and I was the guy waiting. Why couldn't you just be one more car, right? The only time we notice some things, it seems like, is when they go wrong. Ever wonder how much the Lord actually watches out for you, even in the delays? In the Lord's hands, delays can be very big blessings, right? Timing makes a huge difference. And God makes the delays work for his people. In John chapter 11, we are told that Jesus deliberately waited for 4 days. 4 days. He knew that Lazarus was sick. He knew it, and he wasn't that far away. Both Martha and Mary were actually troubled by this. If Lord, you had been here, my brother would not have died. And then Martha goes on to say, but I know that even now God will do for you whatever you ask. You can sense the tension there, the tension between faith and trouble and trust. But notice Jesus' timing. It is understood from Jewish tradition that a dead body is not truly and finally dead until that 4th day. In the Talmud, it says the whole strength of mourning is not till the 3rd day. For 3 days long, the soul returns to the grave, thinking that it will return into the body. When, however, it sees that the color of its face has changed, then it goes away and leaves it. If you translate that, basically it means that the soul lingers for 3 days. And then when it can't recognize itself, the body, it finally moves on to the Lord. All hope is lost. Lazarus was essentially beyond hope, which is why the 4th day is important. 4th day, therefore, was a day in which would produce a maximum effect of faith for those who witnessed Jesus raise Lazarus. The delays made the whole event even more potent and significant. As I mentioned yesterday in Mark chapter 5, there's the same idea here of delays. The delays for Jairus were in the Lord's hands, an opportunity to build faith for Jairus, To hear the woman's witness was important for Jairus, to see and know her faith, to see how it produced so much good for her. All of that was good for Jairus. He delays to, you see that Jesus delays for Jairus' sake to hear that testimony. This woman bleeding for 12 years, healed because of her faith. And in faith, it led her to come to Jesus and ultimately be welcomed as a daughter. Jesus says to her, "Daughter, go in peace. Your faith has healed you and freed you from your suffering." Mark 5:34. Right on the heels of this report comes the Jairus' daughter is dead. Right at that pinnacle, right at that moment, you see the timing of Jesus, right? You can almost see the hope of Jairus' face just melt away. I can be sure that he was thinking a lot like Martha at this point. Lord, if you'd not stopped for this woman, if we'd just gotten there sooner, my daughter would not have been dead. When Jesus arrives, of course, the funeral has already started, but he takes the little girl's hands and he says to her, "Talitha koum," little girl, I say to you, get up. And immediately this 12-year-old girl does what 12-year-olds do, hops right up and starts walking around. God's timing was important for Jesus' crucifixion too. You see, it seems like a delay in time, thousands of years of prophecies and predictions. Galatians 4:4 tells us that Jesus came in the fullness of time. The Lord had found the sweet spot in history after thousands of years for Jesus to come and fulfill our salvation, to fulfill his promise. And if you read verse 5 of Galatians 4, we find out that there's a purpose in the delay, right? To redeem those under the law that we might receive adoption to sonship, right? Rome had established roads and common language, Greek. Caiaphas and his kind had settled in. All the right players were in place, all the right circumstances and cultures. The culture itself was all ready for it. And even though Romans and Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin itself were unknown to David, he writes about those things in Psalm 22. And Isaiah writes about Jesus' suffering in Isaiah 53. And we see just different passages sort of finally come together and understood. Matthew 24 tells us that the last days, that when Jesus will come back, the last days will be bad. But Jesus will cut them short to preserve the elect. He will wait as long as possible to get every last soul that he possibly can to be saved. See, Jesus' timing is ultimately always for God's people. So what am I saying today? Well, what I'm saying is that no one can fully understand God's timing or how it works, but I can offer you this much. God uses timing to bring the maximum blessings to his people. Ecclesiastes 3:1 verses 1 and 11 says, "There's a time for everything, a season for every activity under the heavens." Verse 11 says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time. He also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end." God makes everything beautiful in its time. I can say, I met my wife on vicarage, for example. Her mom and my vicarage pastor tried fixing us up earlier that year, but it wasn't until the last quarter of that year that she decided to meet the vicar. And it was a good thing, too, because after I met her, if I'd have met her at the beginning of seminary, at the beginning of vicarage or whatever, well, let's just say she was a huge distraction, and I needed to focus on my goals for a little while. She was a blessing, though, and the timing was perfect. But the timing for both of us, in fact, were perfect. And here we are 25 years later. It's not just marriage, but God makes everything beautiful in its time, even death. When someone we love dies, it's natural to wonder as Martha did and struggle with our faith as Martha did. Yet to trust in the Lord is the key. We may not always understand, again, the wisdom of God's timing. However, the one thing I just want to keep driving home today is that God's timing always has in mind our best interests, especially the eternal interest, the faith interest. That takes a lot of trust. Yet when we look at the scriptures, we can see that the Lord is consistent in making everything beautiful in his time. In faith, we can rise each day by the grace of God and say, in the words of Psalm 118:24, regardless of what comes, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And now, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you with his favor and forever and always give you his peace. I'm Pastor Woods. Thanks for being with us today. The Lord bless you. And be careful this weekend, 4th of July weekend coming up. Be careful. But the Lord bless you in that too, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.